Today I'm going to finish drawing this harbor view in Tenby, Wales, and if you missed part one, I recommend going back and watching that one first. But who's going to stop you from watching just this one? Probably no one, I would guess. So do whatever you want. If this is your first time here, this channel is about my process of learning how to draw as I travel the world, using real life scenes just like this one as my references. This is day 78, and I don't know. I think I'm doing okay, but feel free to let me know what you think in the comments, as long as they're nice. Okay, we're back. And as you can see, I went straight for that tower in the background, not even wasting a second. And I'd say it's looking pretty fine. I need to remember that it's not the primary subject here, so I don't need to spend too much time on it or go overboard with the proportions or anything like that. I think what I have here is more than adequate, and I see it as kind of a cherry on top of this section of the drawing. It's the last significant component that I'll be adding, which opens things up for some finishing touches throughout this top area, like extra shading and a few little details here and there, leaving me to grind away at the horrible confusion that will be the foreground. But before we get there, I figured I'd fire off a few observations of the drawing so far, how I'm feeling about it, and what I might have done differently up to this point. First of all, my disdain for drawing windows may know no bounds. I really do hate them so much, but I recognize here that they are pretty much the only things on these buildings in the background, at least the only things majorly visible. And their inclusion produces the effect of detail. And even though my approach to them here has been nothing more than messy little squares, I don't think that detracts from the effect. When I sit back and take stock of what I have up to this point, it's that area that catches the eye. I mean, of course, that's the case right now. There's not much else here, but you'll see that even by the end, the boats still end up leading the eye up and out toward all of those windows. And by having so much going on up there, even though it's far from perfect and the marks all resemble each other, it's like this satisfying journey, like there's something to stick around for. There's a deeper lesson in there somewhere, one I know could help me improve sooner or later. But for now, I don't know what it is or how to implement it. I'll just have to be content with the horrible fact that windows are, I don't know, important or something. Okay, second. This drawing in particular has me at a crossroads. While I spend a fair bit of time working on a lot of specific shapes and details and all that, I also make it a point to pay attention to shading. And when I do so, it feels like my brain clicks over into another mode. And when that happens, I'm observing the scene differently. And I wonder if one way would be more productive or enjoyable than the other, rather than this combination of the two. So what do I mean? For example, the waterfall from the other day felt like I was drawing from dark and light alone, more than precise individual lines to create things. The process itself was a lot more organic, it seemed, which is no doubt thanks to the reference itself being literally organic. Contrast that to today, or honestly most days, and you'll see that I'm focused on something else. That is crafting the individual things. However, while making this drawing, I was aware of that difference. Primarily, I noticed how it felt different, but that put me in a position to consider if I was able to draw more from dark and light, like I did of the waterfall, how might I do that here? And would it even be possible to do something like that? To the latter question, I think yes, it's possible. I just don't know how, which conveniently is the answer to the former. As I sit here, if I really focus, I can see on screen all of the different shapes of dark and light, and how with broad strokes one could pretty accurately, I think, represent this entire scene without having to think about any of the details. And maybe that's the trick. Just like with the blind sketching I've talked about in the past, or how sometimes I'll try to ignore the concept of a thing to better access its like objective form. Maybe it would take something like that. But then that's the crossroad. Like, while that sounds great, maybe it's not the method I choose that matters, but the method or combination of methods that takes me where I want to go, that begets the best drawing for me. Who knows? I don't know. It's something for me to chew on. And lastly, third, I like these big scenes. I think they're overwhelming and time consuming, clearly, but I don't have nearly the same amount of fun drawing a potted plant or a single tower, contrary to popular belief, or really anything as much as I do something like this. Again, was this kind of maddening? Yeah, whatever. Was it uncomfortable and seemingly everlasting? Yes. Okay, yes. But it was also fulfilling. And it was just nice to be in a place like this, looking out at a big vista. That's how this series started. The very first drawing was maybe one of the biggest, if not the biggest, in scale. Boy, did I have high hopes for that one. But I'm sure you understand. There's something really spectacular and grandiose about this. And however arduous it is to draw, it's ultimately worthwhile, which is probably what matters. Anyway, those are some things that I noticed and felt like mentioning. But now that we've reached the boats, let's talk about them, shall we? Right off the bat, yeah, they're ugly. I know it. They're bad. But my approach to this area was simple. Just get something on the paper. Having that little ghost chip that I talked about yesterday, right from the beginning, that definitely helped keep things scaled correctly, from foreground to background. But my little doodle, I think, set my expectations a lot higher than they should have been, because these are hard. I've never drawn a boat before, at least I don't think I have, but they seem so simple, even on land like this. I know there's more of them to consider, but out of everything in this reference, I had a weird, relaxed confidence about these before starting, and I was just dead wrong. I hate them. Ironically, this is kind of what I was talking about before, about separating the concept of a thing from its objective shape or whatever, and I just could not do that. No matter how hard I tried, all I could see was a boat and another boat and another, and the angles are all different, which really threw me off. And yeah, I just had a hard time down here. Not to mention the layers. Holy smokes, how was I supposed to deal with all that? I mean, the background area is chaos, and I never had any intention of drawing all of those boats anyway. But even way up in the foreground, right here at the bottom of the frame, this one boat right behind the other, that's just so confusing. And, I end up copping out and drawing them all pretty much exactly the same way. I didn't really even mean to, but one after another, they all sort of came out looking alike, so I just went with it. On that note, though, while the details of the boats themselves should ideally be ignored, I have to applaud myself for what ends up being a not too shabby composition of boats. Probably thanks to photography, I do have an eye, I guess, for composition, and I'm happy to see that I was able to take that and apply it here to some extent. It could be better, no doubt, but given my confusion with how to draw them, it could have been a lot worse. Speaking of worse, the boats in the middle, the ones a bit to the right, in between the wall and the boats in the foreground, those are way too small. You can see in the reference that they're maybe half or a third the size of the biggest boats in frame, prospectively, but I made them like a fifth or maybe even smaller. That wouldn't have mattered as much had I made the boats that sit near the wall, the furthest away, just as small proportionally, but no, they're about the same size, maybe even bigger in some cases on the left, which unfortunately confuses the whole thing. Honestly, it's not something I'm too hung up on, not really at all, but it does make the boats in the middle seem more like extensions of the foreground boats. So if I could go back and fix it, I'd probably put just one boat in their place, scale it up about 50%, and call it a day. Well, we made it. 2 videos for the price of 1. Or maybe the other way around, but whatever. Here's the end result. And even though it took forever and gave me permanent nerve damage in my legs, I worked hard on it, and I like it quite a bit. There are countless little mistakes here, but I don't really care. More and more, the essence of these references is emerging, and I couldn't be happier. I am indeed learning to draw, and that feels really good. So let me know what you think in the comments. If you liked this video, please go ahead and like it. And if you're enjoying the series and you'd like to see me continue to learn, subscribe to the channel. Anyway, I appreciate you for taking the time to watch this one and the last one, and I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks.